DEI has nothing to do with diversity, equity, or inclusion. It has nothing to do with platforming the marginalized, giving a voice to the voiceless, putting those into position who otherwise would not have a chance. It has nothing to do with that. Now, it claims to do that on the surface, but in truth, DEI has everything to do with power. Simple. These individuals want power and they want it by any means necessary. We have to remind ourselves that we're dealing with Marxists here, neo-Marxists, and a lot of them are finally showing their, communistic roots. They're showing their true temperaments and they're literally classifying themselves as communists. Now, if you look in that Communist Manifesto, in this ideology of theirs, it is about oppressed versus oppressor. And it is the job of the oppressed to topple over whatever system, whatever hierarchy is existing in order to create their own. Simple. So they see themselves as essentially unexcusably the individuals who have the God ordained or non-God ordained, right? Because there really is no God in that religion of woke, but they see it as they have the authority to tear down any and everything by any means necessary that does not conform to their worldview. And so that's why we see this complete outlash, this outcry, this outroar of insanity. And you think to yourself as a non-social or psychopathic individual, non-narcissistic individual, surely this must be about, I don't know, human rights, and they just take the human rights thing too far. But in truth, it has nothing to do with human rights. For example, why is it that the so-called feminists, who a lot of the radical feminists fall into this very same category, why is it that they can protest something like, I don't know, unaliving their own children, right? Especially in the West. A lot of their protests have to do with the ability to unalive their children, which is inherently sociopathic. Oh, sorry, psychopathic, because that's murderous. And then you have, protests as far as people's voting decision. They will literally galvanize by the tens of thousands across the entire country in order to protest a candidate going into office. Now, these are the very same people when there are cases like what's going on right now in the UK, or at least what's being uncovered, is that over the last 40 years, there has been a underground grapist network that has been terrorizing the country. And young white girls have been the victims of this. Now, keyword, girls. The feminists claim to care so much about women's rights, yet when it comes to those situations, they are silent. Nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be heard. Now you think to yourself, well, why would that be? Maybe they're just not, aware of what's going on. No. It has nothing to do with awareness. It has everything to do with it doesn't serve their own personal agenda. Simple. It does not fall under what they see as pushing forward their own narrative. So they have a narrative within their world that, the Islamic people are oppressed, right? Those of color are oppressed. That's why they're also the Free Palestine people. They're all the same people, Ukraine, Free Palestine. It's all the exact same people with every single one of these causes. And so because this grapist network within the UK is filled with members of the Muslim religion, Islamic folk, the feminists say nothing. Because they have a perception that, well, we can't speak down on them because these are the oppressed people. It's a twisted, warped psychology, folks. It's a twisted, warped psychology. And the reason I wanted to bring that example up, and I'll even just leave this quick one before, getting back in the point at hand, is to say, Black lives matter, Black lives matter. So when there's an incident of a white cop or a white citizen who takes the life of a Black citizen, or criminal, whatever, maybe just a Black person, it is obviously used by the race hustlers and the media, et cetera. And they push this narrative of, this is systemic injustice, this is racism within the police force, et cetera. Yet, when you see, I don't know, a multitude of Black kids being unalived within these Black neighborhoods, nobody says anything. There is no protest. There is no, fundraisers, donations of multis of millions of dollars, because that doesn't serve the narrative. It doesn't serve the oppressor-oppressed narrative, which is what they need everything to fit into. And if it doesn't, then it falls on deaf ears, right? So the DEI mantra or this DEI slogan has been a way that they have packaged the same means of coercion, bullying, control in order to get power into institutions. And it's probably been the most effective thus far. I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying effective that it's like it's worked within these places, because his job is not to work. It's not to be profitable. His job is not to actually solve problems. His job is not to go in there. His job is to disrupt. His job is to destroy what is already standing. So again, it is an anti-capitalistic build. So if it goes into an organization and the company topples, go woke, go broke, then it's actually doing its job. You need to pay because you are the oppressor. Even though you are my employer, even though you're the one who's actually allowing me to, teach this nonsense within your organization. And it's become an industry. And I think this is the most powerful point, or the most important point. I'll say that. Because when you start to see that there is an actual way that they're getting real-time, quote-unquote, power through authority or quasi-authority, as well as monetary and financial. So I did at least 2 videos on this guy. His name, or at least his chosen name, is Ibrahim Kendi. I believe his actual original name is like Henry Rogers or something, right? Something Rogers. But of course, that wasn't going to work. To be a race hustler, you can't have no damn name like Henry Rogers. You got the, Ibrahim X Kendi. So Ibrahim finds himself writing a book titled How to Be Anti-Racist, right? And he has this entire movement of, all whites are racist. And there's ways in which you can become at least less racist or become an anti-racist. You can never not become a racist. As a white person, you're stained. You're basically cooked from birth. But what you can do is to do all these things within my book that I'm going to sell to you as a book, and then a program that you can, institute into your own corporation or your schools or whatever it may be, and you can pay me tens of thousands. Well, turns out that this man ended up making $40 million from donations as well as book sales, by these corporations, etc. I mean, Jack Dorsey, the guy from Twitter, the original Twitter, Jack Dorsey paid $10 million or donated $10 million to this guy. That man must have a lot of white guilt. $10 million to an individual who essentially has zero competence in anything besides, not even in writing. I mean, people in his own space were saying that the book was trash, but lo and behold, you find yourself in a place where, these companies are accepting it, these billionaires, these fundraisers, or these capitalists, etc., are accepting this idea. And mind you, one of the ways to be anti-racist in this man's book is to be a non-capitalist, which is one of the most ironic things. I love how Western communists are always benefiting from capitalism every single time. This dude Hassan Piker, oh yeah, I'm a communist, makes millions of dollars on YouTube in the United States. Oh, it's brilliant. It's lovely. I mean, sometimes I look at him like, that's why cults exist, because some people will see the reality right in front of them, the truth right in front of them, and because they don't want to accept it, they won't. And so they too will call themselves, communists as they scroll down their $1,500 capitalist machine, right? So DEI turns into an industry. DEI turns into a cash cow. It's connected to the race grievance industry and, the LGBT community, the alphabet peoples. It is connected to the feminists. They all galvanize, and essentially they now have almost a reoccurring revenue model as they had never had before. They find a way in which they can get into companies, corporations, they can get into organizations, nonprofits, they can get into the education system, and they can spew this hate-filled rhetoric, and they can get significance, they can get positioning of power and prominence, and they can get funding, they can get money, they can get resources. They're looking to play the same game, just in a twisted and warped way. And that's the danger of this thing. It never was to help. If you wanted to help people, let's say of marginalized people, whatever it may be, right? However you want to quantify. If you want to help them to get certain roles, positions, jobs, etc., you change the culture and the priorities of the culture. There's a reason why Chinese Americans or Indian Americans, etc., they have such high grades. They test higher than most to everybody else in this country, including white folk from here, right? It's because they have a culture that prioritizes those things beyond everything else. Like when I'm in a coffee shop, I'm doing some editing or, create thumbnails, etc. Real late at night, like the time they got to kick me out, it's like 9:30ish in some of these places, a Starbucks, whatever it may be. The people that I see in there almost every single time are Indians. Like almost every single time, they're Indian kids. 20, 21 years old, 22 years old, textbooks out on the table, laptops up, typing something away. It's a culture. So if you want, people to be in certain positions, it's like you look at the NBA, NFL, etc. You see a majority of black folk because that's what's prioritized more times than not, right? So they become experts in that field. They become the best suited for that field. We want to talk genetics all day, but again, it's like the people who have the genes within that specific group of people are going to be disproportionately in that space. Nobody likes to talk about, there's not enough equity in the NBA, in the modern NBA. There's not enough inclusion. No, it's not a problem there because, again, that doesn't fit the narrative of power that the overall system is playing. This DEI machine itself. Again, it's bigger than just the policy and the paperwork. It's about the ideology and the philosophy behind it. It is inherently about power because it is inherently Marxism, which is about power. It's about tearing down this power structure in order to create our own, right? That's what Marx believed. He believes you need to tear this system down in order to create one where the so-called people have the power, which is really mob rule. The majority rules, right? So it's like 51% of the people are saying this, then 49% have to bow down and obey to that 51%, or even if seemingly the majority. That's why they're so loud. They want to make it as if they're the majority. And they said, because it's everybody, you have to. And so you see these corporations fold. Now, thankfully, we're seeing a reverse of this, but it's not going to be enough just to simply, ease back. So shout out to guys like Robbie Starbuck. You guys should check out his content. He is, well, not single-handedly, but he's been the leader of a movement that has helped to close down a lot of these departments across from Harley Davidson was the first company all the way to McDonald's as recently as, these past couple of weeks. He has been adamant about contacting CEOs, not bullying them like they do, but just contacting CEOs and saying, do you know what these programs are actually doing? He shows them financial statements, breakdowns, this, that, and the third, what's happening to you financially, as well as what's happening culturally, how it's actually hurting the culture, because people don't even like to talk about that part, where it's like race relations get even worse. There's even more discrimination taking place. There's even more uncomfortability amongst peoples, etc. Through a lot of these policies and a lot of these teachings, a lot of these philosophies that are perpetuated throughout these companies and schools. And so he exposes those things. A lot of the CEOs don't even know what the hell people are reading. They haven't even gone through the material. They just don't want to be seen as a racist. They just don't want to be, seen as problematic. And so they go along to get along, which is spineless behavior to me. It's spineless behavior. That's why I have a respect for the likes of an Elon, but not a Mark Zuckerberg, because Elon did it on his own accord when it was unpopular. Whereas Mark is like, oh, is everything good now? Is everything safe? Don't get it twisted. I'm likely going to use their platforms. Don't get that twisted. We're going to get this message out regardless in all ways. However, cowardice allows for the shit to move. It allows it for it to propel without, essentially being challenged. And we're the only ones who can challenge it because, again, you have to be the one who's able to see it and the one who sees the truth about it. And a lot of y'all been messaging me, sending different comments, things of that nature, with your own experience, your own perspectives, and we have to continue. We have to continue to call the BS out.
I used to be afraid of the dark, place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 3-6-5, that's a full rotation. I see you looking up, you know them constellations. Constantly gazing like house of praises, you get to praising. They see your light shine.